Hi, Professor Summer. How are you?
I'm
Thank you.
doing well.
Thank you so much for joining us and willing to participate in our interview. First of all, please introduce yourself to my students.
Sure, my name is Dan Summer. I live in New Jersey. I am a PhD candidate at Lesley University, and my background is in art therapy. I went to Hofstra University in Long Island, New York.
Thank you, Dan. So, our questions are regarding labeling and stigma, since I know that is down your alley.
Hmm.
And I asked my students to kind of form questions, and I organized them into five main themes. And we thought this was a great opportunity to hear from an authority in this issue about your opinion about these questions. So, this course is about special education, introduction to special education. So obviously, this is about labeling regarding children or adolescents who have disabilities regarding their communities. So those will be the subjects. So I think the first main question is how do you believe that labeling or stigma forms in society? Do you think we're all influenced by it? Do you believe that there's any positive side to labeling or stigmatization?
I think stigmatization is constructed by society. It's often consisting of people who are in marginalized populations, including people who have mental illness, some sort of physical disability, or other disorders where they are sort of marked or stained by society. For example, people with HIV and AIDS have often been stigmatized. So it often has negative outcomes for people in particular groups, which often results in a loss of social status, loss of job opportunities, housing opportunities, but also reduction in lower self-esteem and self-worth. So it has a lot of negative outcomes associated with it. I guess positive, if people are able to acknowledge that they are um, feeling a certain way, if they're feeling down or are able to connect with other people who have similar circumstances, then at least they won't feel as isolated or alone.
Okay. So I think the next question was do you believe it's possible to influence the way children, from the children's perspective, to influence the way they perceive other children with disabilities or other adolescents with disabilities? Do you think
I
there is
think
something?
I think it really comes down to education because stigma is associated so much with stereotypes and discrimination and prejudice. I think if other people are educated on mental illness or other um, social issues, that would actually help in the risk of people being stigmatized. So in schools, for example, they do workshops or they do performances where people will present on mental illness and talk about their experience of living with mental illness as a way to educate the audience on this is who I am. Even though I have this illness, it doesn't necessarily mean I have to be labeled this certain way. And there have been studies that have shown that it has made an impact that with younger children who are able to see videos or some sort of performance um, which depicts the true experience of people who are stigmatized, it does decrease the chance of them viewing others negatively. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're saying that by education we can change. You're being optimistic. You're saying that something can be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
So, do you think that there is a connection between the environment that we're in and the way we label and the way we stigmatize? Do you think that different environments work different in the way they view disabled people in their community?
Um, well, I think a lot of it has to do with, demographics plays a role. Um, Honestly, I really think a lot of it has to do with really the lack of education of people. People who are not informed um, will again jump to any assumptions about a certain person, especially for those who go to therapy for whatever reason. It'll automatically, not automatically, but will often go to a negative association towards a person. And I think it's important for educators and other practitioners to be aware of diagnostic criteria for people, but also understand certain cultures' history, um, so they can better understand the person's experience, so they don't necessarily jump to discriminating or stigmatizing other people.
Do you feel as an American that different states in America treat disabled people different?
Well,
Or do
I feel
you?
our president-elect
I knew that would come up. Yeah.
often, just fosters the rhetoric of disability is a bad thing, or we should shun certain people, which of course is really a negative thing that could happen in the United States over the next 4 years or so. But I'm sorry, I digress a little bit. Can you ask me that question again?
So I'm saying, do you think that different? Okay, let's minimize. Let's focus. Let's say communities. You feel like different
Yeah.
communities in the United States will accept disabilities different. For instance, if you go south, is it different than going to the east, to the west?
I don't know if I can really answer that. I don't know if there's enough evidence to really show if that's going to make a difference among different communities. I think more research has to be done in those areas.
Okay. So generally, we
But
go
I
back to the same thing.
think surveys that have been done, small surveys that have done in the states have often, shown negative attitudes towards children. But again, these are also done by surveys. They're all quantitative based, not necessarily qualitative based. So again, it's a lot of it is again a lack of education or values that certain people have that make them jump to these ideas.
So I guess the next question kind of connects to what we've been talking so far, but you said education, but what do you think can change the way we perceive others, the way we stigmatize? Because I know that you use theater, right, as a way of working. So other than education, what else can change the way we perceive and can it be changed? I know that you're optimistic, but I'm saying,
If you change, it takes. I think it's going to take not a long time. It takes a lot of work for perceptions to be changed. I think contact with people who have a certain disability, like if people are exposed to people who have an intellectual disability or other learning disabilities or physical disabilities, exposure to them from person to person, so they get to connect with that person in a real, authentic way, can be helpful to people. My study on stigma last year was theatrical performance, and the children and the adolescents who participated all had a psychiatric disorder. So they worked on developing a script to be performed in front of an audience, which consisted of their family members and friends. And it was a way of them telling their stories about this is who I am, and but kind of playing it out in not a fantasy way, but a dramatic way, which kept the audience engaged, but also gave them a better understanding of their experience. So it's educating an audience, but it's also providing some sort of contact with an audience as well. So they're able to get a visual picture of the person as they're sharing their stories. So I think education and contact are two of the primary ways to change perceptions of people.
I think those are great answers, because I think that's what therapy is based on too, something about the connection, about the relationship. So you're saying, so I hearing you say this, and I'm thinking we were talking in the course about involving children with disabilities in regular school settings, and how that can influence the way children who have to have some kind of communication with these children in their class, make them work on this relationship since they're young children, and help them kind of like work on the way they perceive these disabilities, if it is a disability.
Well, I think you asked earlier about different communities, how they perceive others with disabilities, and I live in Bergen County, New Jersey, which is kind of an upper class area, but they have excellent schools there, and their focus is really all about integration. So they put together kids who might have different disabilities and integrate them with kids who don't have any problems at all, as a way for them to build social skills and to learn from each other, but also really maintain a platform that this is an anti-bullying environment. So I think more schools really need to show that. And I think that happens more in like these wealthy neighborhoods. Maybe not as much in the city, but I think I shouldn't necessarily generalize that. I think it happens in the city, but because cities are often overcrowded, it's a little bit more difficult to manage. But I think in suburban settings where there is more money funneled in, it is easier to really emphasize the values for kids and have the resources to really meet kids who might have disabilities as well. So they could fit in and be integrated better in society.
I guess another thing that comes up is a lot of times I feel like we also have to change the way we stigmatize ourselves so that other people can perceive us differently. Do you have any opinion about that?
I think it's easy to stigmatize ourselves based on our own upbringing and stuff that we've experienced as kids. And stigma is often an internalized thing. There's self-stigma where people internalize the negative associations that are projected onto them. So I think sometimes it's hard to fight from self-stigma, but you have to be able to have like a tough skin or a coping mechanism to be able to deal with it, I think. And it's going to come out. Sometimes you're always going to have to kind of stigmatize yourself or question yourself or maybe not feel as confident about certain things, but hopefully if you have enough internal resources, that should be enough.
So you're saying it's part of the process. First of all, accepting who we are, and then maybe other people can accept us for who we are as well. I mean, you see different. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
So you see different people accepting their disability, and then enables other people accepting them as well. You see all these movies, or you see people who talk on the TED Talks. You see all these people who are able to accept it, and it influences the way the society accepts them as well. So in other ways, we have responsibility in the way that people perceive also on ourselves. If we ourselves have the disability, it's like, do you feel that we are just as much as responsible as other people in the community?
Yeah, I think so, but I think the arts are important in really showing a sense of responsibility to the communities, whether it be through theater or through visual arts or through other art forms as a way to kind of create, to reinforce social justice, to empower people and who are often feeling oppressed or marginalized and move them away from the margins or outside of society and closer to the general norm.
Okay, so I think we kind of did all the questions. I think the last thing, just to close up this, you said education is good, but what do we do with people who are not in an educating system anymore? I mean, we're talking about communities, okay? We're not talking about, one of the things you proposed was doing a theater and bringing the community into theater and connection. Does anything else come to mind when thinking of how do we change community as a community? Is it even possible to change community perspective?
I think policy is the next thing, because that can really go towards specific communities as a whole. A lot of it has to do, of course, with finances and being able to get monies for certain things to be changed. But I think by contacting state makers or policy makers, I think that's really the best thing to make some sort of difference.
On the political level.
Exactly.
I see what you mean. Thank you so much for your time and for your enlightenments and your great answers. Hope to see and talk to you soon. And happy holiday.
Same to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.